What's the difference between a cultivar and a wild or straight plant? Today we're going to look into that, and we're going to do that by defining the definitions and then looking at how cultivars versus wild plants affect insects, affect pollinators, and affect genetic diversity. The word cultivar means a cultivated variety. This means that it's been grown through selective breeding done by humans. A wild plant, on the other hand, has grown and developed in nature without any interference from humans. Let me fix that. And before we get into this, I need to give thanks to Susan Martin at Piedmont Master Gardeners for bringing this information together in an article that I will link down below in the comments. So we're going to look at two recent research papers that give information on insects and then pollinators, and then we'll look at genetic diversity. So how do cultivars impact insects in comparison to wild plants? Well, from a field study with about 16 plant species of woody shrubs and trees, with cultivars of each species for a total of 160 plants, they did a study where they put the plant species in a ring with the natives planted in the middle of the ring and the cultivars of each species matched on the outer of the ring. Douglas Tallermeyer, noted entomologist from the University of Delaware, and his team focused on 3 insect behaviors for the study: how caterpillars reacted to the changed characteristics in cultivars, how and whether hatchling bagworms recognized differences between cultivars and natives, and the overall impact insect on a plant during a season. Now, from the study, out of the 4 traits that they were looking at, only one of them came up as a strong deterrent. That was changing leaves from green to red, purple, or blue. As Tallermeyer explains, red removed the chlorophyll from leaves and loads it with anthocyanins, which actually act as a feeding deterrent for insects. Regarding the other cultivar traits, slight variegation didn't seem to have any effect on insect habits. However, as the percentage of variegation increased, it did become less attractive to insects. Changing a plant's habit, such as making a shrub more compact, didn't seem to have any effects on insects either. On the other hand, a larger berried blueberry cultivar does attract more insects because of more availability to eat. So how do cultivars impact pollinators in comparison to wild plants? Well, a field trial by Dr. Annie White of the University of Vermont in 2016 included 500 plants, 14 native species with native cultivar pairings. As a general intro, what her studies found was that the more manipulated a cultivar was, the less attractive it was to pollinators. White hypothesized that color differences and decreased pollen and nectar production were leading factors for this. However, she also cautioned that cultivars should be judged on a case-by-case basis. In her study, White found that about half the cultivars were equally comparable to the native species, and about half were inferior. And on this point, I think it's really important to note that during her study, none of the cultivars attracted no pollinators. So it wasn't that cultivars ever attracted no pollinators, they always had some pollinators. It's just a percentage, about half, of the cultivars in this study seem to have attracted fewer pollinators. A hot topic when talking about cultivars versus wild plants is genetic diversity in nature. There's an understandable fear that from cultivars being spread, there's a loss of biodiversity in genetics found in natural areas in general. This comes because humans develop cultivars by interbreeding and selectively choosing certain traits from certain plants, and this actually reduces the genetic pool from which a plant is made up of. This plant then might be the mother plant from many seedlings, and within those seedlings they create the seeds that they sell at the supermarkets or your local Bunnings. Because of this, they're almost genetic clones of each other, and this sameness in our planted landscapes can cause problems with pests, disease, and other unimaginable or situations we can't be prepared for. Though there is one interesting part that I didn't realize until I did a little bit more research on my own. Many of our annuals are actually grown from seed in our gardens. You get the seed from your local Bunnings. And each seed then has such a short lifespan as an annual that it's pollinated by many different bees who might go cross-pollinate with a wild plant. And in a way, they can create a genetic biodiversity bridge between wild and cultivar varieties. actually helping bolster the biodiversity of these plant species in the wild. So after all that information, are cultivars better or worse? Well, it really does depend on your garden priorities. If you want larger fruits, bigger flowers, longer flowering seasons, then a cultivar can be a really good option. Plus, a lot of them can be pest or disease free of some certain elements. So that's really great when you're gardening at home and you want these particular traits, like larger berried blueberries. But if you're more interested in rewilding an area of your garden or landscape, then using native or wild seed banks can be a really good way of keeping that natural biodiversity and growth of genetics, as well as helping everyone out in the ecosystem. I hope you learned something new today, and if you did, please leave a like and comment and consider subscribing. I'm really excited this is my first video, and if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, I would love to share it with you, so please let me know, and thanks.